The real issue is that in this democratic moment in South Africa, each of us with our diverse interests, agendas and privileges have a very clear decision to make. Do we want to be part of the new South Africa? Do we think that Stellenbosch is part of South Africa? Because in as much as we want to insulate ourselves in this little Europe, we must be very clear that Stellenbosch is not exempt from the winds of change that are blowing through this country. Stellenbosch is in fact part of the Republic of South Africa, for those who have forgotten. And Stellenbosch is responsible for a lot of the inequalities that this same republic continues to face today. Sometimes I think that when we talk about this beautiful institution, we forget that the actual academic thesis for apartheid was casually written in black and white just down the road in the sociology department of this university. Today, I'm standing in what was called the DF Malan Center when I was a student. And I graduated with beautiful results in 2012. When I walked across the stage, I've never been so happy in my life to have a white man tap me on my head. But the reality is that DF Malan, the man after whom this building was named, would not have wanted me here. To DF Malan, I was only good enough to be a slave. Yet here I stand with a Master's in Peace and Conflict Studies, cum laude. When the Vervoetplak in Dagbreek came down last year, I couldn't believe the levels of outrage that some people expressed at its removal, as though there was any good thing to his thoughts about humanity. The truth is that, unfortunately, white South Africans will never understand what the experience of racism really means. It's not just about being called a monkey by a sparrow. It's not just about being told that you are, quote, a messed up race that opens its legs just to get a child grant, as Marie van Rensburg brazenly claimed a few days ago. It is a daily psychological violence that manifests in every single area of our lives. It manifests in our religion and the way that we perceive ourselves. It manifests in our economy, it manifests in politics, and it even infiltrates our education. So unfortunately, white people will never understand what it is like to be taught the history of your own people, not in your language, in a building named after a man that thought you were intellectually and scientifically inferior to his own. To be studying at a school or to have a degree from an institution literally built on the labor, the suffering, and the land of your own people, and then be confronted with that every single day is a distasteful experience. This is not something that we were supposed to simply get over in 1994. So the reality is that a system that was racist, patriarchal, and unconscionable in its capitalism on the 26th of April before the vote did not magically change on the 28th of April after the vote. And this is why we are still having the same conversations in South Africa that we should have had back then. A recent tweet from Kaya Dlanga captured this perfectly. While I deeply respect and honor the legacy of Nelson Mandela, one of the greatest mistakes I believe he and his comrades made was to tell their people to, I quote, forgive before an apology was offered. In South Africa, contrary to other normal peace processes in the world, forgiveness was given before the crime was acknowledged by the perpetrators, end of quote. The TRC was supposed to deal with our issues of unforgiveness and our lack of reconciliation. But the evidence of the last few months and the last year is contrary, and people are not interested in having their anger policed or curated. The problem, I think, is that in South Africa, we are not 100% convinced that our past was unjust. Unlike the Germans, who are genuinely sorry, barring the right-wing neo-Nazis, as a country, Germany is so embarrassed by their history that Nazism and public glorifications of Adolf Hitler are criminalized. There is no in-between that maybe some parts of Nazi Germany were nice and other parts were not. Germans have outrightly written that part of their history off as unequivocally bad. In South Africa, we do not have a consensus that plus minus 400 years of colonialism and 52 years of apartheid was an affirmative action for white people at its best. Today, we still debate the legacy of Rhodes, and not all of us agree that our history was in no way, by any measure, pretty, because you still hear people today talking about die goeie ou dae. Ons land, dames en here, is in groot moeilikheid. En Stellenbosch is in groot moeilikheid. Maar nie as gevolg van die tradisionele swart gevaar nie, of as gevolg van die kanker van Engels nie. Ons is in die moeilikheid want ons het komplekse probleme wat ons moet aanspreek. En dit benodig 'n heel ander vlak van moedigheid en dapperheid om die spooke van ons lelike geskiedenis aan te spreek. I realize that at the moment, many of my white friends are struggling to find and even articulate what their place and the role in the new South Africa is or should be. And I realize for sure that our government has not been faithful to its commitments after 1994. We have an epic crisis of leadership in this country and good governance, and it will take a concerted effort by every single individual in this country to hold our politicians accountable. However, I want to be clear that nothing we are experiencing and feeling is happening in isolation from what we see manifesting on a national level. We as a nation are the sum total of our experiences. I want to say that again. We as a nation are the sum total of our experiences. We are a mess, and we must acknowledge that mess. We cannot attempt to erase the mess that we are from our social consciousness. When we choose not to listen and extend practical compassion to the most marginalized amongst us, we do our own narrative as a nation the greatest disservice. Without compassion in this country, we will not survive the current tumultuous times that we are in. Practically, this means that 2016 is the year that white South Africans must take the back seat and must listen in conversations about race, power, and privilege. Black South Africans had to give forgiveness in 1994 simply to get a vote. In 2016, if Black South Africans are to continue with that mantra, it must be reciprocated with compassion and active forms of retribution. No matter what our individual sentiments, South African women of color got the shortest end of the stick in the negotiated settlement, and it is evident that their children are coming back for a refund. Soos ek voor hierdie konvokasie staan, besef ek dat daar's mense wat sal voel ek is anti-wit, ek is racisties en dat ek meld myself aan asof ek al die antwoorde het vir Suid-Afrika se probleme. Maar ek wil graag hê dat u sal mooi luister vir dit wat ek sê. Vir die van ons wat vasglo dat my gedagtes en my perspektiewe is 'n aanval teen Afrikaans en teen wit Suid-Afrikaners, wil ek dit baie duidelik maak dat ek het geen belangstelling om teen enige rasgroep of taalgroep te staan nie. Wat ek wel glo, is dat ons moet altyd eerlik met mekaar wees in sulke gesprekke oor ons land, ons universiteite en die toekoms waarheen ons gaan. Die koei in die bos wat ek glo Prof Breitenbach nog gaan aanspreek, is hierdie kwessie van taal. Die ding met taal en hoe ons dit gebruik, is dat dit is nooit neutraal nie. Veral in die konteks van Stellenbosch en Suid-Afrika, taal is net so persoonlik soos wat dit polities is. Vir my is dit baie belangrik om te erken dat die US 'n Suid-Afrikaanse universiteit is. Dit behoort aan alle Suid-Afrikaners en nie aan een groep nie. To be part of this country, the underlying thesis that we have all implicitly accepted is that South Africa belongs to all who live in it. And unless we want to have another CODESA, or we cannot now start to delineate and decide who gets to study where on the basis of what language. Tweedens, wil ek vinnig praat oor hierdie kwessie van die beskerming van die taal. Soos jy kan hoor, praat ek baie mooi Afrikaans. Ek is nie 'n Afrikaner nie, en ek het nie Afrikaans op Stellenbosch geleer nie. Maar ek is baie lief vir die taal. Vir my is daar woorde en gevoelens wat ek nie beter kan beskryf in 'n ander taal nie. Maar ek dink die primêre funksie van 'n universiteit is nie noodwendig om 'n taal of 'n kultuur te beskerm nie, maar eintlik om hoër onderwys te voorsien vir die dogters en seuns van ons land. Waar hierdie aksie nou toegang tot opvoeding vir alle Suid-Afrikaanse studente begin beperk deur middel van taal, moet ons dan herëvalueer of die universiteit eintlik sy werk doen of nie. Afrikaans gaan nie sommer sterf nie as dit nie meer die hooftaal van onderrig in ons klasse is nie. Vra net vir mense wat nog steeds hulle taal praat sonder 'n universiteit. Laastens wil ek oor die taal self praat. Ek is amper klaar. Die groot vraag hier is, aan wie behoort Afrikaans? Die eenvoudige antwoord is dat Afrikaans behoort aan Afrikaners. But who owns Afrikaans? The Kaapse Klopse, with their Guma music, should also rightfully own Afrikaans. The people of District 6 and the Boerkaap should rightfully also own Afrikaans. The face of Afrikaans at our university and in South Africa should not and cannot be only the face of a white man, but also the face of colored Afrikaans women and black Afrikaans women, because these people exist as well. Colored Afrikaans women and black Afrikaans women exist too, no matter how much we deny them access to our university. So, we must stop this thing of using colored and black Afrikaans people who are currently dispossessed as our cleaners and our farm workers as an excuse for exclusionary policies and practices. The very act of using them in such a way is exploitative in nature because we know that their children will never make it to Stellenbosch University as it is. But even if their children do get here, they will arrive and they will see an Afrikaans language and culture defended in their own name that they have no part of. Die grote waarheid is dat Afrikaans is baie tale. Dit is verskillende kulture. Ons moet erken dat Afrikaans is in ons eie geskiedenis en selfs vandag baie keer gebruik teen mense wat nie wit is nie. As ons vir 'n Afrikaanse universiteit wil verdedig, dan moet ons aanvaar dat dit behels onder andere 'n verdediging van Afrikaans, Swartlands Afrikaans, Hoëlands Afrikaans, Oeverbergs Afrikaans, Weskus Sandveld Afrikaans, Karoo Afrikaans, Ooskaps Afrikaans, Oranje Rivier en Gariepsdams Afrikaans, Boesmanslands Afrikaans, Grieko Afrikaans, Namakwalands Afrikaans en Richtevelds Afrikaans. En dan moet ons erken dat die gesig daarvan is meestal nie die gesig van 'n wit Afrikaner man nie. Ons moet erken dat baie min mense is verbind tot die beskerming van alle forme en alle gesigte van Afrikaans in die nuwe Suid-Afrika. Ons moet ook erken en herken dat die ontwikkeling en onderhoud van Afrikaans as 'n akademiese taal, as 'n kultuur en as 'n magtige ekonomiese en sosiale gereedskap was nog nooit bedoel of bestem om 'n nie-wit bevolking te beskerm nie. Dus kan die teenwoordigheid van 'n Afrikaans sprekende kleringpopulasie nie gebruik word as 'n rede om eers te behou soos wat dit nou is, net omdat dit gemaklik is in hierdie gesprek. Dit wys dat ons net belangstelling in kleerling en swart studente het wanneer dit die doeleindes van 'n wit Afrikaanse agenda pas. En dit, dames en here, is baie oneerlik. Both apartheid and colonization dehumanized us all by giving white people a superiority complex and giving black people an inferiority complex, albeit with different consequences. We were all dehumanized, and we must dismantle this inhumanity that we are all products of by reclaiming our collective humanity. We must reclaim our histories so that both of our children will know exactly the truth about themselves. We must reclaim our languages so that those who choose to speak our languages do so out of pure love, like I speak Afrikaans, and not out of obligation. I look forward to the day when I do not have to talk to my children about racism or sexism. That is really my dream for South Africa and Africa as a whole. But for us to get to that point where we never talk about racism and sexism again, we need to know that the roles we need to play. Those who must listen. Those who need the chance to cry must be allowed to cry. Those who need to be angry must be allowed to be angry. Those who need to talk must be allowed to talk. But none of us gets to claim an easy victory, because there is no victory in our collective pain. There is only closure, and South Africa desperately needs closure. Thank you.